Hi everyone, I'm Julian, the Partner Success Manager here at Build Exact. Thanks so much for joining and thanks for waiting there. Generally, people always run a few minutes late, so we like to give people a bit of time to grab a cup of tea or coffee before they hop on. You should be able to see myself and Russ on the screen as well. So for those of you who don't know, Build Exact online estimating and job management software. We know a ton of you guys that are on here are customers, but there's also a lot of people that aren't actually using us at the moment. So we kind of wanted to set up a webinar, kind of get through some really useful talking points at the moment. So Russ is here from the Association of Professional Builders. I met with Russ and his business partner, Sky, about a month or so ago up in Gold Coast. And, you know, everyone knows what's going on in the industry at the moment with material shortages and the cost rises there. And Russ had some really good information and knowledge around what was happening in the industry and what builders could do. So we brought him in to talk to our customers and our potential future customers just around what's happening in the industry and some of his advice. So I'll let Russ hop in and introduce himself now.
Thanks so much, Julian. Great to be here. Shall I share my screen at this point?
Yeah, I'll just quickly take mine off so you'll be able to do that. There you go.
Awesome. Just having a look down the attendee list, seeing some familiar faces. So thanks, guys, for joining us today. Excited to be sharing this information with you. So welcome. Like Julian said, my name's Russ Stephens. Today, I'm going to show you how professional builders are remaining profitable despite the material shortages and the price increases, because if you do not take action now, your margins will get eroded in the coming months, leaving you to cover the losses from your own personal savings. Either that or your building company will get starved of cash as supply chains continue to buckle under the strain and you find yourself unable to continue the work on your current projects, which means you could find yourself spending Christmas wondering how it all went so badly wrong when everything looked so rosy just 12 months prior. So if you do plan on being in business in 2022, then you need to take action today because the clock is ticking and time is running out for custom home builders. Now, this is not a case of us using cheap scaremongering tactics in order to get your attention. This is a very serious situation that is unraveling across Australia right now, where construction company collapses are now starting to happen with increasing frequency. And as a side note, the Association of Professional Builders ran a story on this exact scenario playing out back in November last year. And back then we predicted that a perfect storm was being created that would see residential building companies liquidations gathering momentum throughout 2021, culminating in a record number of failures in 2022. Now, the story was picked up by the media across Australia, not so much in the rest of the world. However, it doesn't matter where you are located, Australia or the US, Canada, New Zealand, because if you're building new homes, we're seeing this happen in all these countries. So if you are a new home builder or you're doing high-end renovations, you are in the right place because we are going to address the challenges that you're currently facing in your building company and help you to avoid the fate that is lying in wait for those builders who do not prepare. So I'm guessing for a lot of you, this is probably not the first bit of advice that you've received regarding the supply chain crisis that has engulfed our industry. However, it may well be the first bit of advice to have come from actual builders who have already faced the same challenges that you are currently facing and have been willing to share what's worked for them. Now, the problem with the current situation is that no one has ever seen anything like this before. So all the well-meaning advice that's being offered up by business coaches, consultants, and accountants is all theoretical. And from what we've seen, a lot of it is basically head down, bum up, and just get on with it. Well, I'm here to tell you that following that advice is simply not going to work, because right now you need to be taking advice from the builders that first started experience supply chain issues 9 months ago and then reacted quickly in order to maintain their client relationships and avoid any catastrophic financial damage that could bring down their building companies. Now, those are the guys that you really need to be listening to. Now, before we get started, just really important to take a moment, just get yourself prepared. So please turn your mobile on to silent, turn off notifications, close that door, and even maybe put a do not disturb note on it. And then pull out a pen and a pad, because I will be moving really quickly through this, and I don't want you guys to miss out, because in this presentation, I'm going to reveal the secrets for keeping your clients happy while also protecting your margins. And most importantly, as we move through this presentation, please give me some feedback in the chat box, because it's not easy for me doing these presentations online, because I just can't see if you guys have fallen asleep back there, or maybe you just got bored and started staring out the window. So let me know what you're thinking by typing in the chat box as we move through. So guys, if you ever thought boom times in the construction industry meant boom times for building companies, well, that is simply not true. I mean, while it is true that boom times mean more opportunity for builders, the fact is custom home builders make less money in good times than bad times. And the reason for that is simple, because when times are tough, costs remain static. And in some instances, builders can even negotiate better prices on the materials and labor that they've already budgeted for. And that means they can increase their margins after the fixed price contract has been signed. However, in good times, the opposite happens, and that's because the cost of labor and materials goes up, destroying any net profit that was priced into a project. Additionally, materials and labor become scarce resources, and that leads to delays and also an escalation in the fixed cost to revenue ratio, which places further pressure on a building company's ability to remain profitable. However, a lot of builders, they just can't help themselves. They keep signing more and more contracts without pricing in construction inflation, which leaves them effectively working for free for the next 12 to 18 months. And of course, nothing I share with you is theory. The information that I am sharing has all come from real builders operating real building companies, guys that understand what's really going on in the industry. Builders like Ty Alro, who runs a $40 million building company and meets with his finance manager at 7 a.m. every Tuesday just to analyze his numbers. Now, he joined me recently on a construction panel that had been assembled to discuss the current crisis in the industry. And on that discussion, Ty shared with other builders that they were really busy at the moment, but they were not making too much money because of what is happening in the industry. And as a result, things were pretty tight. And he went on to say, it's always the thing. The busier you get, the less margin you make. And that's why we're here today, because I know you guys, you want to keep your clients happy, and you want to do it, but without losing money on your projects. And the fact is, the 3 C's are the key to navigating your way through the next 6 to 12 months of supply chain chaos, which is why I'm going to take you through them on this presentation. Now, my goal for this presentation is to help 2 types of residential home builders. For those of you who are already knee-deep into your contracts and are now coming to the realization that there may not be any profit left in the job by the time you get to the end, then I'm going to show you how you can still make a profit, but without upsetting your clients. And for those of you who have signed contracts in place that are ready to go, but you've not started the construction yet, and maybe you're being told, just do them as quickly as you can, even if it means losing money, then I'm going to show you a better way of dealing with that particular situation so that you don't go broke in 12 months time. Now, at this point, you certainly, or you certainly should be thinking, well, who's this guy to come in here and tell me how to run my building company? So very, very briefly, guys, I started working with builders back in 2011 after discovering project management software. And during this time, Russ Stephens, my daughter, was studying marketing at university, and it wasn't long into her course that she realized just how out of date the content really was. So we discussed the future of the internet, online marketing, and just how fast it was all changing. And within a few weeks, Sky withdrew from university in order to focus on learning the brand new marketing strategies that were replacing the old school methods. Now, in order to put these new skills into place, we decided to start a marketing agency for residential home builders. And long story short, things went well when the business grew, but we noticed for a lot of builders, although we were generating plenty of good opportunities for them, they were still not closing as many of those opportunities into sales as they really should have been. And that's why we decided to expand into sales training. And in 2014, we launched Acris Sales Training. Now, that went phenomenally well. It grew really quickly. However, the closer we work with these builders, helping them with generating leads and then progressing those leads into contracts, the more we realized that they were not making the kind of money they deserved to be earning, given the amount of hours that they were putting in and also the risks that they were taking. And it became clear they also needed help with increasing their margins and systemizing their building companies. So in 2015, we launched the Association of Professional Builders, a business coaching company dedicated to helping residential home builders to generate more leads, more sales, and increase their margins, but all while improving the building experience for their clients. And thanks to founding members like Toby and Elizabeth Searle from Highwater Homes and Wayne White from Constructive Homes, the Association of Professional Builders now coaches more than 460 residential building companies worldwide who have completed over 1 billion in residential construction projects just in the last 12 months, as well as being a trusted source of information by the media in both Australia and the United States. Now, I don't say any of that to brag, but I simply want to give you guys some context for the information that I'm about to share with you. So, let me start off by telling you guys how I discovered these strategies and tactics for dealing with the current supply chain crisis. Now, it all started on the 4th of September 2020 when I saw a post inside the APB members group on Facebook. And it was posted by a builder in Louisiana in the US who shared with the group how they had just got verbal commitments to proceed to contract from 3 clients despite adjusting the contract prices by 3.5% in order to account for the recent lumber spike. Now, 3.5% is nothing to what we've seen happen to lumber prices in the US and even the timber prices in Australia, but it was an early indication of what was about to happen in our industry. And already with at that time, with so many design contracts being signed by builders and architects between May and September last year, we were already bracing ourselves for the inevitable squeeze on supplies in 2021. But seeing price hikes filtering through as early as September 2020, it really shocked us, and it made us realize that the industry was facing a much greater challenge in the months ahead than anyone was prepared for at that particular moment in time. So we started asking our members questions, what was happening with suppliers, what was happening with prices, what was happening with subcontractors. And by asking those questions, not only did we uncover very quickly what was going on in different parts of the world, all over Australia and including the US and Canada and New Zealand, but we also received a wealth of information from professional builders documenting how they were dealing with these challenges while protecting their profits. Now, this was crucial information that every builder in the private members-only Facebook group wanted to hear and needed to hear because their companies were under threat. And now we want to share that advice with other builders outside of our immediate network of members in the hope that it can help your building companies as well. And like I said, none of this is theory. These are all strategies that have been developed and tested by other professional builders. Hundreds of builders from all over the world have already taken action and benefited from these strategies. So I have no doubt that they will help your building company as well, just so long as you take action. So the 3 secrets that I'm going to take you through today are: possession is 9/10 of the law, how you can use that fact to your advantage, how to keep your clients happy while protecting your margins, and my personal favorite, how custom home builders can ensure they have enough cash to see them through the dips ahead of us. Now, do not miss that one because it will keep your building company safe for years to come. Now, some custom home builders may be under the impression that a signed fixed price contract must be started even if you're going to lose money. So let me share a quick story with you guys. One of our members, and we're going to call him Jim, he reached out to us after realizing that the $800,000 contract he was about to start had no or little profit left in it. In fact, when Jim apportioned his fixed costs for the 9-month build period using the pricing for profit calculator in the APB members toolbox, he realized he was actually going to be losing money on the project. Now, initially, he reached out to the association that provided him with the contract template, but incredibly, the advice he received was not what he was expecting, because Jim was told that if the contract had been signed, then he will just have to get on with it and finish the job as quickly as he could. Now, when Jim explained that he was going to be losing money on the project and that embarking on this project was going to put his whole building company at risk, as well as exposing his suppliers and subcontractors to a potential debt that could not be paid, he was then told to add the deficiency into some variations in order just to remain solvent. Now, Jim was shocked by that, and that's why he then reached out to us to see if we had any other suggestions. Now, the thing is, there is an old saying that has held true since the dawn of time, and that is possession is 9/10 of the law, or 9 points of the law, depending on who you talk to. And the point here is that in law, when it comes to a dispute, the person in possession stands a greater chance of winning the argument or getting the decision. Now, at this stage, no home has been built yet, so there is theoretically nothing to take possession of. However, at this moment in time, the builder is in the best position that they will ever be in, because they still have 9/10 of the law on their side. The build has not started and circumstances have changed. Therefore, it makes no financial sense to continue. In fact, as the director of a company, a builder has a legal obligation not to continue, because this contract will clearly lead to a situation where the building company will be forced to trade insolvently. And it's very unlikely that a court will order a builder to start a contract that they cannot complete before having to place the company into receivership, because they can't pay their bills when they become due and payable. Now, not only that, the templates that have been used for these fixed price contracts, they're very ambiguous, and they leave plenty of leeway for interpretation when it comes to acts of God and force majeure. Now, don't for 1 minute that I'm attempting to give you guys legal advice here, because I'm not, and I can't, because each state has its own individual requirements when it comes to residential construction in Australia. So it would be impossible for me to share any meaningful advice regarding your particular situation and contract. However, what I can tell you is this. We have recently sent over a number of contracts from different states in Australia to our lawyers to review. And in every instance, there was sufficient ambiguity in the contract for the builder to either adjust the price or simply decline the contract. Now, we're seeing this happen every day in the commercial sector. Contracts are being rejected by builders all the time because the budget has increased to a point where it's just no longer viable to execute the contract. So these guys don't even start it. But in the residential sector, builders are seeking advice from their contract providers, and they're being told to simply get on with it. Now, it is madness, and it's going to lead to carnage in our industry in 2022 when all these building companies start falling over, and they will, I guarantee you. The tsunami of building company failures that is about to hit our industry is going to be of biblical scale. And what's the point? You can work yourself silly for the next 12 to 18 months, make no money, and potentially face personal bankruptcy, or you can take a step back. You can reevaluate your current situation and then only proceed with the jobs that are definitely going to return you a profit. Now, another way to look at it is this. Consumers are making a fortune right now from the increase in land value alone. So why should you subsidize their build costs out of your own pocket? You have a responsibility to your staff to keep your company solvent, and you have a responsibility to your dependents to protect your family wealth. So don't let anyone tell you that you have to build their home on a price that was quoted 6 months ago, long before any of these price increases came into play. Don't be a victim of this situation. Now, our advice to our members right now is to seek proper legal advice from a professional lawyer. Now, not a legal advisor that comes as part of a subscription service, a professional lawyer who will act in your best interest and no one else's. Because the truth is, a professional lawyer is going to pull these residential contracts apart in the current climate. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. So here's a tip, guys. Right now, before you go any further, review and re-estimate every contract that has not yet been started and include provisions to cover the expected continuing price increases. Now, it's important to include special conditions that protect your building company from bearing the brunt of the cost escalations. Now, if you talk to the contract providers in some states, at least, they will tell you cost escalation clauses are illegal or unenforceable, which is why they don't put them in. However, if you put that same question to a professional lawyer, you will get a very different answer. Now, here's what one of our members did way back in September before anyone realized just how bad things were going to get. They offered their clients two options after the contracts had already been signed, but before the builds had actually started. Now, they were being smart. They were thinking ahead and they were protecting their margins from a possible downside. So option one, they gave the client could stay with a fixed price contract, but an additional 3.5% would be added to the lumber price to cover any fluctuations in the market. Or they could go with option two, in which case the builder would insert an allowance for the lumber and then let the client take on the risk of the fluctuating price. And in return for taking on the risk, it also meant that the client could end up saving some money if the price of lumber dropped. Now, what this did was it put the client in charge of the decision. Now, it wasn't the builder's fault that the price of lumber was rising unexpectedly. And instead of taking that problem and making it their own, this builder presented his client with two different options, which clearly demonstrated just how exposed he was as a builder. And it allowed the client to make a call as to whether they felt an early price increase was going to be justified or not. Now, in this instance, all three clients felt the price of lumber was unlikely to increase by 3.5% or more. So they all opted for the option, which was to put in allowance. But if the builder had not taken action before construction had started, he would have had a very difficult time convincing those clients that they were going to have to pay anything extra at all. And in all likelihood, they would have probably claimed that the builder was the expert, and as such, he should have been aware of the fact that lumber was going to increase by 100, 200, or we've seen in the States 300% increases. So the main point here, guys, is it's very hard to negotiate after the fact, but when you negotiate before the work has started, the balance of power is very, very different. Now, in this instance, the builder was in possession of the decision as to whether this build was going to go ahead or not. And that is why possession is regarded as 9/10 of the law. And when it comes to contracts, it's not just the contracts you have with your clients that can hurt you, it's also your supply contracts. Now, we've seen a lot of price increases from suppliers lately, and a lot of it is simply preemptive or even price gouging. Now, for some materials that are currently in short supply, it is extremely difficult to negotiate with suppliers when they hold all the cards. However, we are seeing some crazy price increases being applied across the board, and in a lot of cases, these increases are completely unjustified. However, we are also hearing about instances of builders rejecting those increases and not only keeping their prices at the same level as in 2020, but actually managing to lock in those prices for another 12 months, enabling them to price their new jobs with a lot more confidence. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to do that with timber or maybe even steel at the moment, but don't allow these price increases to become the norm. Challenge everything in order to protect your margins. So, guys, let me know in the chat. Is this making sense to you? Can you see why it's important to review your contracts right now before you start them? And if those contracts are already underway, you still need to review the budgets now rather than putting it off. So type in the chat box, guys. Just let me know. Who's up for the challenge of reviewing the budgets on all of their contracts, and who has signed contracts that are no longer profitable? And more importantly, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about those unprofitable contracts? Are you going to contribute your own wealth in order to subsidize someone else's build, or are you going to say no? Let me know in the chat box, just so I know you guys are still awake back there and you're paying attention. Cool. Oh, that's excellent. Thanks for your feedback, guys. Cool. Elizabeth is saying she reviewed a contract last month and had to put more special conditions in, and even a lawyer. Well, this is what you're up against. Even a lawyer tried to challenge it for the client. This is what you're facing, guys. If the clients are going to bring in lawyers, you've got to have good people on your team. So I was talking to someone about this earlier, one of our members, and they were asking how they could get these clauses done without spending thousands. And the thing here, guys, you don't want to scrimp on this part. A professional lawyer is an important part of your team. And if you can't afford to pay a few thousand to get this done, what's really showing is that your margins are not strong enough. That's the hole in your business, because you must be able to invest in lawyers. Great feedback here, guys. Thanks so much. Cool. Okay, I'll take a quick sip of water while those comments are coming in. Now, a lot of custom home builders think, well, that all sounds great in theory, but right now I need the work, because without the cash flow, I simply won't be able to pay my staff, and I'm going to have to close my building company. So I really can't afford to lose anything in my pipeline. So let me share a quick story with you on that. About 2 years ago, we had a builder in our mentoring program. We're going to call him Josh. Now, Josh had a good building company and he was growing nicely. However, during one of his monthly coaching sessions with us, our executive coach uncovered a potential problem that was unraveling regarding the timeline on a very large $1.5 million project. Now, the client on this project was Scottish, and the one thing we all knew about him was that he could get very emotional when things weren't going his way. And another thing we knew about this client was that he wanted to be in his new home by Christmas, because he had his family coming over from Edinburgh to stay with him over the holiday period. Now, after the coach heard about the challenges that Josh was dealing with in regard to this client, the warning bells started ringing, because Josh was telling him how 4 weeks after the deadline had already passed for ordering the tiles, he still couldn't get the client to confirm their selection. So the coach is like, hang on, when's this home due to be handed over? And Josh said, it's going to be tight, but we were hoping for the first week in December. And so the coach said, well, if they're 4 weeks overdue with their selection decision already, that's going to push it into January, isn't it? And Josh, the builder, he just shrugged his shoulders and he said, well, probably, but we're only in July now, so we're just going to have to see how it goes. Now, the coach is saying, hang on here. The deadline for selecting the tiles was 4 weeks ago, which means every day after that deadline is effectively adding another day to the handover date. So have you told the client? And the builder said, well, not likely, because he's going to go mad. He said, I'll deal with it if and when it becomes a problem. And there you have it, guys. That is why builders have such a terrible reputation for communication. Now, fortunately, in this case, we were able to convince Josh to get on the front foot and have that difficult conversation now, rather than waiting until the week before Christmas. And by having that conversation early, the client understood that the only way to get this home finished on time was by selecting tiles that were already sitting in a warehouse in Australia, rather than being specially ordered out of China. And after initially being a bit annoyed, the client made their decision and they settled down and the build continued on time. But what happens in a lot of cases, the builder believes that by avoiding a difficult conversation now, it's somehow going to become easier later, and it never does. It just gets worse. And that is exactly what is happening in our industry right now, because prices are going up. Builders already know the effect it is going to have on those jobs that they haven't started yet, and even jobs that are underway. But they are putting off those difficult conversations, which is only going to make it worse. Now, the best way to deal with the current situation is by over communicating, which means you got to get on the front foot and address the elephant in the room. And that means managing your client's expectations, because client communication has never been more important than right now, because your clients are the ones that are having to come up with additional money to cover the increase in their allowances. They're also going to have to cover the additional rent that they might end up paying because the timelines are just simply blowing out. So they are bound to feel worried and frustrated. And the only person that they can turn to and even blame is you. But by getting on the front foot and explaining to them what has happened, what is happening right now and what is likely to happen in the future, but without sugarcoating it or maybe leaning towards a best case scenario, the easier it's going to be for you. Now, a good book to read on the subject of negotiation is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Now, Chris was an FBI hostage negotiator, so when he negotiated, there was not a lot of room for error. But since leaving the FBI, Chris has created a very successful consulting business where he teaches the art of negotiation. And in his book, Chris outlines some key skills that are also very important for builders to learn when it comes to managing clients' expectations. Now, the first one is anchoring, because you can bend your client's reality by simply anchoring their starting point. And what that means is, before you make an offer, emotionally anchor them by saying how bad it will be. So when you get to numbers, set an extreme anchor to make your real offer seem reasonable, or use a range, and that then comes across as a lot less aggressive. But the real value of anything, it depends on the vantage point that you're looking at it from, because it's all about perspective. Now, that may seem overly simplistic, and when you hear me saying it, a natural reaction is to think, well, I wouldn't fall for that because it's way too obvious. But we all do, which is why we see this technique being used all the time in marketing and sales. I mean, just take a look around and you're going to see this one hidden in plain sight all the time. Now, the other key skill that will help you when dealing with emotionally stressed out clients is what we call labeling. Now, what you do here is list the worst things that the client could say about you, and then you say them before they can. Now, this is known as performing an accusation audit. And by doing it in advance of a client meeting, you're going to be prepared and also in a position to deal with negative dynamics before they actually take root. And because these accusations, they often sound exaggerated when we actually say them out loud, speaking them will actually encourage the other person to claim that quite the opposite is true. And that is perfect for this particular situation. So, for instance, you could say something to your client like, you're going to think I'm ripping you off, or that I should have known the price of lumber, the price of timber was going to increase by that amount, or I should have known there was going to be a labour shortage. And in a lot of cases, you're going to find the client jump into your defence. Now, remember, you're dealing with a person who wants to be appreciated and understood. So after using this technique to drive the client away from the labels that you don't want, you then need to use positive labels to reinforce and encourage positive perceptions and dynamics. Now, for instance, labeling someone as reasonable and understanding, that will encourage them to act in accordance with the label that you just gave them. Now, this is really powerful stuff, guys, so use it responsibly. And by the way, this is all the techniques that con men use to dupe people, but we know as builders that you're going to use it with integrity. Now, do you see what I just did there? Now, one more thing I want to share with you guys very quickly is the power of no, because saying no makes the client feel safe and secure and in control. So you really do need to trigger this one. And by saying what they don't want, your client, they actually define their space, their boundary, and that allows them the confidence to then listen to you. And that is why saying to them, is now a bad time to talk about the allowances in your contract, is always going to work better than, do you have a few minutes to talk about the allowances in your contract? Now, it's very, very simple technique, but it's extremely powerful. So Three key skills which are relatively easy to learn, and they could be the difference between a client that views you as the enemy and someone that is making a fortune while they bear the brunt of rising costs and delays, and a client that understands that you're on their side and you're fighting their corner as best as you possibly can. So, guys, that is how you keep your clients happy, but while protecting your margin. So let me know, guys, is that making sense to you? Type in the chat box and let me know, because I just need to check your pulse quickly and just see if you guys are all still awake. So who is going to bite the bullet and get on the front foot? Who is going to step up and have that difficult conversation now rather than later? And out of interest, who is going to step outside their comfort zone and use anchoring or labeling or the power of no in order to manage their clients' expectations? Let me know in the chat box. And remember, with great power comes great responsibility. There are a lot of powerful techniques like these which have been broken down and explained step by step inside the APB members portal, but this is not so that builders can go out and manipulate people for their own advantage. Core value we have at the APB is we always do the right thing, even when no one else is looking. So please always act with integrity when using these techniques. Cool, Roger. Good to see you again, Roger. Sue, fantastic to see you guys. Wayne, yep, thanks, Matt. Yep. Cool. Fasal, 3.5 option is great for wholesale builders, and allowance is a good one for custom home builders. Yeah, absolutely. The idea here was like they didn't know how bad it was going to go, and they kind of, by giving two decisions like that, it's the old yes. It's like when you're signing up a concept agreement or prelims. Yeah, you want to go with the yes. Is that Visa or MasterCard? You know, you're putting the client in control. You try and avoid the yes/no questions. Excellent. And I see we've got a few APB members on with us here as well today, which is awesome. Good to see you guys. So for you guys, make sure that you go into make sure you download the client handbook template inside your members portal, because creating a client handbook for every new client keeps them on the same page as you all the way through that build process. So also go through the managing client expectations action plan. Even if you've done it previously, go back through it, because situations change. You're going to pull more out of that training now because there's different situations that you're facing. Excellent. I'll take a quick sip.
Hey, Ross, while you're having a quick sip there, I thought I'd jump in. I won't turn my camera on just yet, but I've also given people advice regarding communicating with their clients. Speaking to a guy the other day, and he was literally on the roof answering his phone to me, and I kind of just said to him, try to answer the phone on the roof. But I think a lot of people are, tied to their phone to speak to the client whenever the client wants to call. Whereas you can try and maybe set up better communication methods in terms of getting in touch with them and responding to them.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example that you brought up. We get that a lot, where we do a lot of calls to builders, and 5 minutes in, it's like, mate, I'm standing here with a joist on my shoulder, and I've got two other guys with me. It's like, why didn't you say that in the beginning? It's crazy, but yeah, so it's a very good point. Don't if you're too busy to take the call, don't answer the call. Get an answering service, is very important, and get some basic qualifying going on in that answering service, and get them booked in for a proper call when you got the time to speak to them, and that way you're only speaking to qualified people as well. Cool. Okay. Any other questions come in, Julian, before we crack on here? Cool.
There's a few coming in. Do you want to go through all the questions at the end, or do you want to go through a couple?
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's go through the end. Let's keep going.
There's a bit of overlap between some of the first section and this one, so
cool. All right, guys. Well, I admit I love this one because this is how you can ensure you have enough cash to see you through the dips ahead of us. Now, this is information that you're not going to hear from anyone outside the Association of Professional Builders, not from your bookkeeper, your accountant, or even your business coach, unless, of course, they're an APB business coach. Now, the problem with construction financials is that no one understands them properly, or at least not many people fully understand how construction financials work. In fact, I would say there is a 95% chance that your accountant is not producing accurate year-end financial statements for your building company. And as a consequence, if you're a no home builder at least, then you've probably been paying too much in tax. Now, additionally, the chances of your bookkeeper and business coach not understanding your financials correctly is as high as 99%. And those percentages, they're not plucked out the air. They are all based off of our own research, which involves speaking to hundreds of professionals working in our industry. Now, here's the thing. It is impossible to accurately produce construction financial reports without accurately calculating the work in progress figure. And according to a recent report commissioned by the Association of Professional Builders, only 18.5% of building companies are calculating this figure each month. And that means 81.5% of building companies have little or no idea of their true financial position at month end. And what happens when the P&L and the balance sheet reports in your accounts make no sense? You look at the bank balance, and that looks good because building new homes is cash flow positive, which means the money in the bank is OPM, otherwise known as other people's money. But the thing is, you wouldn't know it by looking at your creditors report because all of the supplier and contractor invoices that relate to the percentage of the contract already invoiced to the client are not in your accounts, either because the contract has been front loaded to help with cash flow, or because the concreter still hasn't gotten around to sending you an invoice 6 weeks after they laid that last slab. Now, bottom line, 81.5% of building companies owe a lot more money than they realize, which means they have been paying a lot more tax than they should have been because they have effectively been paying tax on profits that they never made. And that simply compounds the problem because there is now less cash to pay the creditors when they finally submit those invoices. So step one, you need to know exactly where you are right now financially before you can then look ahead and plan to the future, because better information leads to better decisions. Now, once you know where you are financially, you can start planning your future. And that means creating a business plan that covers your key performance indicators or KPIs. Now, in terms of key numbers to watch, you need to be looking at sales revenue, your gross profit, along with the gross margin percentage, your fixed expenses, along with your fixed expenses as a percentage of revenue, your net margin with net margin percentage, equity, cash on hand, and of course, the work in progress figure. Now, keep in mind, if you are building new homes, then the work in progress figure will almost certainly be a liability. So you always need to make sure that you always, at all times, have enough cash on hand to cover that figure. And as a guide, a small building company with an annual revenue of just 6 million will typically have a work in progress liability of around $500,000 to $1 million. So now do you see how important it is to really know that number? And in addition to having the cash to cover your work in progress liability, you also want to make sure that your equity figure is positive and is growing month on month. Otherwise, it simply means that you are losing money. Now, another figure, another KPI to watch each month is workflow. And workflow is often confused with work in progress. However, they are two very different things. Workflow is the total value of your signed contracts minus the amount of stage claims that have already been invoiced. Now, this figure is the amount of guaranteed work that sits in your pipeline, and it acts as a barometer when planning future revenue or committing to additional expenses. And by watching this number month on month, then you can act quickly when you see it growing, and then you can put on more resources. And equally, when you see that figure declining, it could well mean that it's time to start tightening things up in order to remain profitable in the future. And another key figure to watch is your fixed expenses as a percentage of revenue, because when that figure goes over 15%, your company has an opportunity to increase efficiency by reducing overheads, because what it means is you've become bloated and inefficient. And equally, When that figure is below 15%, you have an opportunity to add more staff or resources that are going to save you time and then allow you to spend more of your day working on your building company instead of in your building company. So let's have a quick recap. You need to establish your true financial position by correctly calculating your work in progress figure. You then need to create a plan which includes all of your key numbers, your KPIs, and then you need to monitor your KPIs in order to keep your finger on the pulse of your building company. Now, those three things are all part of your business plan. And the next step is then to create an operational plan. And your operational plan, that contains all of your construction slots. So if your business plan includes signing 20 new projects in the next 12 months, and each project is expected on average to run for 7 months, then your construction slot planner would show 20 start dates spread over the year with the jobs running for 7 months. Now, what that would demonstrate is that you would have 12 jobs running at any one time, which means if your current infrastructure is unable to support 12 jobs running concurrently, then you need to put some more money in the budget for fixed expenses in order to bring more people on. So this is when you might find yourself going backwards and forwards between the two plans, the business plan and the operation plan, just tweaking things until you get it just right. Now, next, within the timeline of each of those confirmed construction slots, and by confirmed, what I mean is the ones that you have signed contracts for and the consumer has also paid a deposit, you then need to set up your stage claim dates along with the amount of revenue you expect to receive at each stage. Now, this, guys, is the gold because this becomes your cash flow planner. And what it enables you to do is just look ahead month by month and predict exactly when the cash is coming into your business. Now, it's really important to be realistic here because if you expect to finish a stage on the 25th of the month and your terms are payment in 7 days, then you need to be budgeting for that money to come in the following month. And of course, if you find yourself in a situation like a lot of builders do right now where the banks are not paying out until 14 or 21 or even 30 days after a claim has been submitted because of the sheer volume of work that they're trying to get through, then you've got to factor that into your budget as well. Budget for the worst and then hope for the best. And finally, once you have your business plan created and your operational plan in place, it's really important to monitor your margins on each job every week. Now, normally, this would be done monthly, but right now, with things changing so quickly, it's a really good idea to keep an eye on them weekly. And it's, guys, it's not hard to do. When you're using advanced software like Build Exact that enables you to record your budgets and your actuals, software like that has never become more important. So I would urge you to be using all the features that Build Exact has to offer you guys because you need it now more than ever. Now, normally, a well-run building company would expect the gross margin to increase by 1 or 2/10% every month. However, during these unprecedented times, you're probably going to see your margins be eroded week by week. And you may even come to the realization that some of your projects are already underwater, even though you're only halfway through them. So, guys, I realise that was maybe a little bit heavy, that last bit, and a lot to take in. And you might be thinking, man, I think I'll just look at my bank balance. But if you do that, then you are not taking into account the work in progress calculation, which reveals the hidden liability inside your building company. Now, here's the thing, guys, you can't unlearn this stuff because now that you know the figures inside your accounts are not real and that cash is not profit and profit is not cash, not knowing your real financial position, that's going to eat away at you until you get to the truth. And I'll tell you what, that is exactly what happened to a client of ours called Neo.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down a rabbit hole.
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a builder who accepts what he sees in his accounts because he expects everything to be okay. Unfortunately, this could not be further from the truth. Do you know how much money you're making?
No,
Why not?
because my financial reports make no sense.
They're up and down. I know exactly what you mean. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you need to know something. What you think you know, you can't explain, but you feel it. You feel it every time you look at your accounts. You feel there is something wrong with the balance sheet. You don't know what it is, but it's wrong, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that brought you here. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Work in progress.
Do you want to know how to calculate it? Work in progress is a liability. It accumulates. Right now, we can calculate it. We don't even need all the invoices or to have paid them. You can do it every single month. When you produce your reports, when you pay your bills. It is the number that is missing from your accounts that is blinding you from truth.
What truth?
Other people's money, Neo. Like everyone else, you look at your bank balance. Cash accumulates due to positive cash flow. But liabilities, they also increase. Unfortunately, your accountant doesn't know how to work it out for a building company. You have to work it out yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You can take the blue pill. You carry on with your head in the sand. You submit your accounts and believe whatever your accountant tells you. You take the red pill. You find out the truth. And I show you your exact financial position. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Let's do it.
So that is how custom home builders can ensure they have enough cash to see them through the dips ahead of us. So guys, do you see how in order to predict the future, we need to gain a better understanding of the present? And also, do you see how predicting future cash flow is a lot easier when you have the tools that can predict it for you? Because getting on top of your financials, it doesn't have to be hard or stressful. You simply follow the right process and you'll understand your building company inside out. And in all honesty, when you do this, you will have a better understanding of your accounts than your own accountant. So let me know in the chat box, guys, who is up for the challenge of mastering their financials and who is going to calculate the work in progress figure every month so that their financial reports make sense at month end, and who's going to use construction slots so that they can grow their building company safely and securely. And let me know who's going to start forecasting their future cash flow rather than simply guessing it, or worse, just hoping that there's going to be enough to cover the bills coming in. And let me know in the chat box, guys, and Julian. But this is something that Build Exact can really help builders with, isn't it?
Yeah, Russ, that was a great video, by the way. I thought it was just going to be just a Matrix video, and then I realized the voiceover was there. Fourth Matrix movie is coming out soon, which I'm delighted about. But yeah, back to the business side of it. Yeah, Build Exact definitely helps. It's one of those areas that when we speak to builders, they'll have a rough idea of how the project tracks after the fact. Some of them will maybe have a rough idea during the fact, but often they won't be able to go into detail and kind of monitor the key individual areas of the software. So what I might do, Russ, I might quickly just share my screen so I can show the software here, and it'll just take me just a second to do that. So for the guys that are using Build Exact already in the job management section, you'll probably already know how this works. But for you guys that aren't using the job management section, or the ones that aren't using us at all, this is just a quick couple of purchase orders that I've done. And what it's showing me here is the actual versus estimate. This is everything I've estimated in the project initially in the quote has come in. I've ordered the materials, I've paid for the labor, etc. And I can actually adjust the quantity and the cost of what I've actually spent on those individual items. So what we'll generally see is people will have maybe a bit more of an idea of what this is happening up at the top here, but very, very rarely they'll be able to tell you individual items here. Now, the issue with that is that if you go over your labor cost for whatever reason it is, or your material cost is going up, you might not be making that change into your costings for another, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Maybe you don't make it ever. Maybe you have an Excel sheet for rough pricing and you've been running off that for 2 years. Any changes here, you can go and pop the notes in. You go in and make those changes to your price list. We've got some supplier prices can be feeding into the system as well. So that'll obviously update. But if you're using your own pricing, then you want to be going in and adjusting that as it happens. And that just might be the way you're quoting. It might be the way you're managing the job. You want to be knowing about that information as soon as possible, as Russ was speaking about there, because we just find that people just don't know. And if you're only running it with your accountant, it's only once every 3 months or once a year, or if it's even worse, you're only looking at back once a year. Massive potential for issues to crop up during that time period. So you really want to be making sure of that data and having access to it as soon as it's going. If anything's going wrong, having access to it straight away, and then from that information you can better set your business up for success going forward. So that was a really quick one that I just kind of wanted to touch on, because it really sort of linked in well to what Russ was talking about. And I think before material prices went crazy, some people kind of maybe didn't realize the importance of this, but with some of it, especially for timber now, that knowing these kind of information and data in your projects has never been more important. So I'll quickly stop sharing. And Russ, do you just want to should we start going through all the questions?
Sure. Or shall I run through quickly just something?
Oh, yeah. From your side, yeah. I'll do that, yeah. So you should be able to hop on now. There you go.
Cool. So I've got something special for you guys. For those of you who are serious about systemizing your building companies, there really is no need for you to try and figure out everything on your own, because all the systems and processes that you need to generate more leads, more sales, and increase your margins are all available for you to download inside the APB members portal. And because Build Exact is such an awesome partner to work with, I want to thank them by giving you guys something that our members have found extremely useful in the current climate. So what I'd like to make available to everyone on this presentation is one of our most highly rated action plans, which covers construction financials. So the construction financials monthly checklist, that enables you to benchmark your building company against the industry standards on a monthly basis, because what gets measured improves. However, what gets measured and reported improves exponentially. That's Pearson's law. Now, inside this course, you'll discover how you can go from low margins and no retained profit in the business to running a successful building company, just like the top 2% of builders are doing, and how you can avoid working for wages and really take control of your residential building company, and understanding the weaknesses in your building company by comparing the 12 KPIs to the industry benchmarks, and what other builders are doing to hit their financial targets. But most importantly, it's the number one thing you must do before you increase revenue in your building company. And that has never been more important than right now with so much opportunity. And of course, as you can see on the screen, this course, it's currently being sold on our website for $497. However, because you guys...
You're not on the screen yet, Russ. You just want to share your screen there, mate?
Oh, right. Sorry about that. Let me, I simply forgot that, didn't I? Let's share screen. Thanks for that, Julian.
No worries.
So share screen. So sorry, guys, I had a beautiful graphic set up for you there, and instead you had to look at me. So apologies for that. But yeah, as you can see, we currently sell this course on our website for $497 US. But because you guys have made the effort to join us live today, I want to give this course to you guys completely free of charge, no catch. All you need to do is just use the special link that I am going to put into the chat box now. So hopefully that you can all see that. I've done the panelists and attendees. All you need to do is click on that link. And when that happens, it's going to discount the price by 100%. So I want to use that as a thank you to both Build Exact and for you guys for joining me on this presentation today. So I guess now we can hit the questions, Julian.
Yeah, guys, if you've got questions, maybe pop them in the chat box. It's easier to scroll through to see them. And just a heads up, I didn't mention earlier on, when you're typing in there, just select all panelists and attendees so everyone else can see your comments and your questions. But Russ, maybe we'll go through the Q&A section first because people have already put them in there. So some of these are just going to be, I think, general comments. Some of these are actually going to be questions. But Paul there has popped down that he's PCing timber materials now on his new contract. So you got any thoughts around that?
Yeah, very, very smart. We've always been against cost plus contracts, and I know this isn't cost plus, but we've kind of been against them because it really does make it difficult for builders to make the margin that they truly can get out of a fixed price contract because it becomes all about price. But the guys doing fixed price, doing cost plus in this last 6 months have really dodged the bullet. But in terms of PC in the timber, 100%, that is a very, very smart move. I'd probably be looking at PC and the steel as well at this moment in time.
Yeah, and Paul's got a couple on there, so a couple more, so I'll just go through those as well. So timber truss is blown out to 15 weeks. And yeah, he's saying that
just on that, Julian, because that's a killer now, isn't it? It's the delays. We're hearing some horrendous stories of builders having to pay up front for materials that are not going to be delivered for 3, 4, 6 months. Now, the other thing I'd just say on what you just mentioned there, truss timelines blown out to 15 weeks, you've got to get that logged with the consumer. Because if you just ignore it, you are potentially exposing yourself to liquidated damages. So all these delays, make sure that you are recording them, notifying the client that there is an extension of time on the contract because of this.
Yeah, and then Paul's mentioned there, he said all the orders after the end of June won't be delivered by Christmas, which is crazy when you think about how many people want to get into a house before the holidays start.
And this is why it's now so important to use construction slots and update them based on this new information, and then look at how that is affecting your cash flow and bring that back into your accounts budget. And you might have to make some very, very tough decisions in the short term. Otherwise, this will sneak up on you. And when you've run out of money, it's already too late.
And Shu has asked any special conditions you can suggest. I'm assuming that was for the contract.
Yeah, look, in terms of special conditions, we are basically talking about cost escalation clauses because that is what is being omitted from these template contracts. Numerous reasons we're being told why they're omitted. They're not enforceable. They're not legal. Go and see a professional lawyer. They will word it up for you. They'll review the whole contract and give you advice, but in terms of these special conditions, we're not talking big money in relation to the size of these contracts and how much of your money is at stake. It's a good investment.
Just going back to the top of the chat here, guys. So I see a bunch of you popping messages in, so we'll get down to those as soon as we can. Nadine's spoken about making a timber a PS. what all the banks think of that. So how's the...
Yeah, look, we had, there was a great thread inside the members group a couple of days ago where one of our members was, he's saying like, yeah, don't forget, your client is the consumer, not the bank. That your contract is with the consumer. The bank are simply facilitating the loan. Don't make it your problem. I mean, sure, the banks will kick up about this, but at the end of the day, you've got to protect your building company first and foremost. And if the banks will not agree to the contract that you've drawn up with the different clauses in it, you can't buckle on that and open yourself up. That becomes the consumer's problem to go and seek finance from somewhere else.
Elizabeth here, I think Russ went through that one earlier on about you getting challenged from the client's lawyer now as well. I think you mentioned earlier, Russ.
Yeah, and again, I think that just highlights why you need a professional on your team, because once lawyers do get involved, it's very easy to get caught out very quickly. Logic and common sense kind of go out the window because in this we don't understand all the legalities, the games that lawyers play. So. Lawyers are my least favourite people. Anyone that knows me knows what I think of lawyers, but we still all have to rely on lawyers to protect our interests.
Sarah's saying she's reviewing one of the contracts, which is great. I'm not sure if that's a question, but he's saying sign contract but losing from profits. I'm assuming that's probably meaning that he's already signed a contract that is already going to cost him money by the sounds of that.
Yeah, and this is where I'd say it's still not too late to at least get a professional opinion, because what we're seeing here, the contracts that we've looked at, they all refer to force majeure and act of God. Who's to argue that this is not an act of God that we're experiencing? It is a black swan event, a very rare event, and I'd well worth getting some advice on that.
Section 15 of domestic building contract has restrictions on cost escalations. How can that be overcome? I think she's mentioned down here that's for Victoria.
Yeah, and again, this is where a professional lawyer will come into play, because there are clauses in contracts for delays. They tend to get specifically excluded in terms of costs. But again, because of this situation that we found ourselves in being so extreme and unique, we believe there is an opportunity to bring the cost escalations into play on existing contracts. But it will depend on the exact contract, and that's why you do need to get professional advice.
Tom has mentioned here that he's warning his clients about it now, and it all comes down to strong relationship with your client. So what you touched on earlier, Russ, about the communication side.
That's perfect, Tom. Yeah, you got to talk about what has happened, the situation, what is happening and what's going to happen. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't buckle under the pressure trying to give them good news. No, use anchoring. Give them extreme news, and then you can move back from that. It makes it a lot easier.
And then from Faisal, 3.5% option is great for wholesale builders, and allowance is good one for custom home builders.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I'd definitely be putting allowances in all the contracts for timber and steel right now, for sure.
Sue, great tips. I'll be buying Never Split the Difference today. A lot of people saying that they were still engaged when you were talking. Difficult conversations with clients. Elizabeth, I think people need to have that a bit more often rather than I'm just saying yes. Jody, thanks for us. Negotiated a big price increase literally an hour ago with a contracted client. That's amazing.
That's Jody Austin, isn't it? Down in Adelaide. Good to see you, Jody.
One from Paul from the questions earlier on. What do you anticipate the timber supply outlook to be for the next 12 to 24 months? Russ?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We've started to hear, and literally just in the last 7 to 10 days, that it's the situation in the US is easing, which could be an early indicator for us here, because we certainly saw it get a lot worse before we saw it get worse here. So that could be an indicator, but bear in mind that their timber prices went up 300%. We obviously haven't seen that kind of level, so early indication that it could be starting to subside a bit. But I guess over the next 12 months, I wouldn't be banking on that at all. I think it's going to remain tough for the next 6 to 12 months. Certainly in the next 6 months at least. Maybe after 6 months, we might start seeing things freeing up a bit.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you've got any advice on this one from Faisal, Russ. How do you handle timber shortages?
Timber shortages. Well, the main thing that I would say is you've got to be communicating with the client and getting those delays logged, because you don't want to expose yourself to potential liquidated damages. And the other part is obviously using your cash flow forecast to see what effect that is going to have on your accounts, because your fixed expenses, they keep grinding away month after month. So while your jobs are at a standstill, those fixed expenses are going to be eating away at your bank balance. So don't wait until that happens. Look at the what if scenarios now, and then based on your situation, you're going to have to make some pretty tough decisions. And maybe you need to get some outside help, some outside advice on this as well for your particular situation. This is where it's imperative to speak to consultants really that can help you through this before it's too late.
And Russ, one from Richard. You mentioned earlier on about the possession being 9/10 of the law. So Richard's just asked, what do you do about your contracts once you've already started the bill to try and remain profitable?
Yeah, once you've already started, I would be passing them over to the lawyers anyway to get their opinion on what has happened, what has exposed you, is losing money, and what can be done in this particular instance to get any of that back to offset it, because they are very ambiguous, the contracts that are being used, which in our opinion does open up the opportunity to offset some of these increasing costs. But it's very difficult it's not the kind of thing that we can put out a blanket statement on it. It is a very individual, with the legislation in each state being so different.
A little joke on here from Andrew. Did you use an anchor price to make us want to do the course?
Exactly. I think no one values education when it's free. So yeah, that's why we rarely give stuff away. And you guys, you've played with it with your time, which we're grateful for. So that's why we're happy to share it with you.
Yeah, just a few more now, Russ. So Elizabeth, again, we pay 20% for timber, so that's to wait 8 weeks for it. Yeah, it's crazy. Paul from earlier on, being transparent and honest upfront is the key. Yeah, I never really understand why people don't do that. For me personally, I always prefer people to be upfront of what the situation is rather than trying to, sweet talk me.
I think a lot of it is we're scared of the reaction, especially when we know we've got a difficult client that's probably only negotiating with us, in all honesty. And it kind of, we try to avoid that situation by, we just naturally go for a best case scenario, and that just makes it harder.
And from Andy here, Russ, it's about the US and the UK. I think you've probably got greater knowledge from the US. I know you've got a number of members over there, but was the labour shortage in the US and the UK noticeable in 2020? It's only emerging in Australia more recently. Any thoughts what's driving the shortage?
Yeah, what's driving the shortage in Australia?
Of labour, yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess going back to the US, first of all, the labour shortage in the US has been going on for the last 3 or 4 years now. That's been one of the biggest pain points in the US, is a shortage of skilled labour. There are plenty of unskilled, but it's the skilled labour they're struggling with. In Australia, it simply is the surge of contracts that signed. It was very interesting when COVID hit in March last year. We saw sales pipelines for builders disintegrate almost overnight. And a lot of the guys on this call, if you think back, you might recall that's what happened to your existing pipeline. But what happened very quickly is new people came into the funnel. And those people were pretty much saying that, yeah, they weren't worried about COVID. They were still going to build. And those people went flying through the funnel. Now, the other thing that happened was people went into lockdown. They had more time to research. So husband and wives, when they weren't having conversations, were now having conversations. And that led to a absolute surge in design work in Q2 last year. So we could kind of see it coming. And Q3 was record-breaking quarter for contracts being signed for a lot of our builders. And then you knew, well, come Q1 this year, everyone's going to be fighting for the same subcontractors and fighting for the best employees. They're going to need more supervisors. So that is really what's caused this labour shortage. It's the pure demand. And what obviously hasn't helped is the government stimulus, the government grants. The government, unfortunately, were looking at the wrong data. They weren't looking at the lead indicators. They were looking at the lag indicators, and they panicked. They hit the button, and they literally poured fuel on the fire.
Yeah, well, I guess just a second that I know for me being in Victoria, if any of you guys are on the call from Victoria as well, we had a massive lockdown, and people that built my house were a massive fan of beige, and I'm not a fan of beige at all. And being stuck at home for 5 months looking at it, I couldn't wait to get some work done in my place. So I'm probably part of that problem of taking some of the labour out of the market for some of you guys. But yeah, no, look, that's pretty much all the questions we had there, guys. So I don't think we've got any more. Let me just do a quick scan back.
I love the way the government are taking credit now for providing the solution and creating this construction boom. No, it was happening anyway. You just made it worse.
Yeah. Yeah, that looks like it's it, Russ. So yeah, we've got a really good, healthy audience on there. So obviously, firstly for Russ, thanks for joining for us, mate. Great knowledge. I was listening very, very keenly there. Some good things for me to take back when I'm speaking to builders as well. And I'm sure a lot of people have taken some knowledge out of that as well. So really appreciate you hopping on.
No, thanks so much for having me on, Julian. Really enjoyed it, and thanks to everyone that attended.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was our highest ever attended webinar so far. So yeah, really appreciate you all from jumping on. Cool. Well, that's it from me. And any other questions, guys, feel free to reach out to myself or to Russ. I'll just quickly throw up the slides just so if you want to take a note of them, you can. Let me just quickly share the screen. There you go. So for us, obviously buildingback.com.au.co.nz if you're in New Zealand, and for us, associatedprofessionalbuilders.com. But yeah, that's all from us, guys. Appreciate your time. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.